Welcome, hello. Today we are going to sew up the Cottage Romper, and in this video tutorial we're going to sew the options that include the hood, the sleeves, and the pockets. So what you need to do first is get your pattern printed out and assembled. So I have mine printed out right here. I'm only doing this size 12 months, so I've utilized my layers and I have turned all the other sizes off, so all I have to see is the 12-month size. My paper is letter paper, so I've turned off the guidelines for A4 paper. I chose to print in grayscale, so my guideline is gray, but if you use A4, your line will be dotted, so no big deal if you want to print in the grayscale. So, all right, so what do we do first? We need to put this pattern together. So let's do that. And I have tape, more tape, and then this blade right here I have marked with pink, so I know this is for cutting paper and not fabric. So let us put Now that we have our pattern pieces cut out, we can cut our fabric out, but let's just take a look at them real quick. So the options that I'm doing, I'm going to do the sleeve, and I've decided to do the short sleeve, so I have cut at the short sleeve cut line. In this tutorial, I'm not going to do the snap placket, so I've cut my romper at the non-snap placket line. If I was going to do a snap placket, I would cut right here at this line. Because I'm going to do sleeves, this is the style bodice that I'm going to use. This is the one for the sleeves. There's actually a separate one for the sleeveless option, and if you were going to do the sleeveless option, you would actually split this piece here. You would cut it here, and then you would just tape it over the top bodice part that is for the sleeveless option. So with that, let's get our fabric and cut all these pieces out. And we're gonna sew this up so quick, and it's gonna be awesome. Ready? Let's get started. We have our pieces cut out. What do we do now? Well, the first thing that I like to do is to kind of get all my pieces made, and then I can just whip right through assembly. So first things first, those pockets. Gotta take care of those pockets. You can, if you don't have fabric chalk, go ahead and assemble your pocket now. Sew it up, and then actually all you have to do is lay it in place and then pin it that way. So there's a couple ways to skin this cat. So you can do it this way. Cut out the hole where your pocket would go and just kind of mark the best you can where that pocket is going to be placed. Pockets. Knit fabric has a right side and a wrong side. It can be very hard to tell, especially with stripes or solids. So for the purpose of this video, I've marked the wrong side with yellow and then nothing on the good side. Here's a close-up of the bad side. And here's a close-up of the good side. If you look very close, you'll see tiny V's on the good side, the front side. And then you'll also see on the back side that it doesn't look quite as good, right? There's a little extra line right here for the back side. So if you take just a few minutes to look at your fabric, you'll be able to tell easily which is the front and which is the back. So let's get ready to sew these pockets. We're going to lay them right side up. This is my good side. And we're gonna fold them right sides together. Ooh, we have a stowaway. One pocket and 2 pockets. Okay. Next, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way around, leaving about an inch, inch and a half opening, okay? So here we are at the sewing machine, and for our pockets, we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and this is going to be different than the rest of the romper. It's just the pockets that we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'm also going to do a straight stitch for this. So for the pockets, if you wanted, you could use woven fabric instead of the knit fabric. And if you're having difficulty sewing knit fabric and you need a break, now's a great time. Use woven fabric for this step. And I have this right sides together. You can see my yellow markings, and my 1/2 inch mark is right there. I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to set my machine so that the needle, when I finish a stitch, will be in the down position. If you have that feature, I recommend it. This sewing machine has IDT, so it's a built-in walking foot. It's a great feature, but it's not necessary. You can always buy a walking foot accessory to add on. So as I begin, I'm just going to hold my tails, do a back stitch, we'll just repeat this on the other pocket, and I'll meet you back over at the table. So the next step, now that your pockets are made, you want to turn them right side out, and then you want to press them, okay? And then position them onto your pattern, or excuse me, on your fabric. Use your pattern if you need to. And then just put a pin in them. Now when we take these back over to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew them on with a straight stitch. But I'm only going to do 3 sides because it's a pocket, right? So we're not going to sew this top side because you're not going to be able to put any Cheerios or rocks in there if we do that, okay? So let's go over to the sewing machine. So we're back over at the sewing machine. This time we're only going to stitch an 1/8 inch away from this edge. So I've moved my needle over, and I'm just kind of getting my foot right. So right about there. I'm going to make it so that my needle is down, and then I'm going to hold my tails as I begin. Don't forget to backstitch. And don't forget to backstitch at the end. With that one done, we're just going to repeat that on the other pocket. Now that we have our pocket sewn on, we're going to work on our hood. Like I was saying, I like to get all my pieces ready. That way when I go to assemble, it's real quick. So here is our hood. And we're just going to lay the 2 pieces right sides together, like this. I recommend, before you sew, to fold this over towards the wrong side 1 inch and press it, just to create the memory fold. It makes it a little bit easier to finish it in the end, okay? So if you haven't done that, go do that now, and then put your pieces right sides together, unfold it, so it looks like this, And so from here all the way around the curve and then all the way down here. You're not gonna sew here. You're not gonna sew here. Here we are at my serger. My serger has stretch needles in because I'm working with knit. If you don't have a serger, you can sew the hood pieces together using a stretch stitch or a zigzag. So I'm gonna start at the top of my hood. That piece, you can see my memory fold right there. It's unfolded. The pieces are right sides together. My seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. Now that our hood has been sewn together, the two pieces, we're just going to fold this back towards the wrong side. And we're going to sew it in place. For this, you're going to want to use a stretch stitch. I'm going to be using my cover stitch machine. So let's go over there and I'll show you how I do it. This is my cover stitch machine. I'm using a Janome 900 CPX. I have 3 cones of thread loaded. I have 2 needles. My needles are stretch needles. Depending on what side you want your looper thread on will depend on how you like this to look. So if you would like the straight stitching look, then you will sew like this with the right side up. If you like the look of the looper threads, then you will sew like this with right sides down. So here I'm getting to my seam, and it's a pretty thick seam. And what I can do to help get over this easily is roll my needles down and grab a shim. So a shim is just a piece of material that's going to help bring that foot up so it's level. Some machines have levering foots. This one, the one I have, does not. So this is just 3 pieces of cardboard taped together all the way around, so it's kind of smooth too. So needles down, foot goes up, and then we insert this right behind those needles. So that's one piece that's done. And now the other pieces I need to assemble real quick before I want to get started on assembling the whole thing are my cuffs. So I'm doing short sleeves, so I have a short sleeve cuff and I have my ankle cuffs. And I'm going to take the pattern pieces off because I know I'm not going to get these confused with anything, because I know the ankle cuff is a wider piece than my sleeve cuff. So again, we're going to fold these, another stowaway, right sides together, okay? And you can take it to your machine and sew it like this as it is, just like that, straight down with a straight stitch or a serge. Or you can fold it one more time and sew it like this. The result is the same, but if you're doing a serge, the seam is actually a little less thick by doing it the fold way, the double fold, okay? So just going to fold these all right sides together, and then I'm going to take them over to my serger and we will sew them in place real quick. For pin, you can pin them right sides together. I'm going to double fold mine because I am using a serger and I would like to have a thinner seam. You can also do the double fold with a straight stitch on your sewing machine. Doesn't matter. Okay, so let's go over to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm at my serger, and this is my raw edges. Those are my folds. So this is the side I'm going to sew down, just making sure that they're all 4 of those edges are kind of aligned. This little one keeps folding over. First things first, we need to sew our fronts to our back. So this is my front. You can tell it's the front because, well, it's got the pockets. But if you didn't have pockets, you could tell by the lower neckline. So I'm taking my back and I'm gonna lay it right sides together with my front, and I'm gonna take it to my serger, and all I'm going to do is do my shoulder seam. So from here to here, stop sewing, and then sew from here to here. So let's go over to the machine. We're gonna work on the shoulder seams. So I'm just gonna line these raw edges up as best I can. They're wanting to curl on me. We're ready to do our sleeves. So when I originally cut my fabric out, I marked this middle point, and you're going to want to do that too right now. And you can just fold your sleeves in half, and with a pin, you just pin it where that is, okay? Super easy. Next, this seam needs to be folded towards the back. So fold it towards the back. And then all you're going to do is lay this sleeve where your mark is, where that seam is. So mark to seam. And then for the purpose of this, I like to use clips. It's a little bit more secure. When we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to take this corner right here and I'm gonna line it up to this corner right here. And I'll start sewing around this way, all the way up to this center point here. I'll remove the clip, gently stretching the sleeve if needed, all the way to this other point. So let's head over to the sewing machine, actually my serger, and I'll show you what that looks like. I have my sleeve pinned in place at the shoulder seams, right sides together. My shoulder seam is towards the back. I'm raising my foot. My needles are up. I'm lining that corner up that I talked about with the corner of this. And I'm sliding it under, and I'm just gonna give it a few stitches to secure it. Okay, and now that I have that in, I'm going to move my fabric and line up the raw edges. Now from where I'm at, I'm just going to gently stretch the sleeve so it matches right up to that center mark. Okay, as I'm getting closer, I'm taking that out. I'm making sure that my seam is still towards the back of my romper. Now that I'm on this side, I'm going to take the two corners and match them up again. And I'm going to gently stretch that sleeve. I know that if I open this up, that shoulder seam needs to go towards the back. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take my sleeve where that pin is, and I'm going to pin it to the seam and make sure this seam is towards the back. Okay? And we're just going to start all over again with this one. Finding that corner right here, the corner, match them up, right sides together. Oops. Get a couple stitches in, and then I can start manipulating my fabric to get everything lined up. With our sleeves sewn on, we're going to fold this right sides together, and we're going to take care of the side seam. So the side seam, when we sew it, we're going to start at the sleeve, and we'll sew, making sure all of our raw edges are lined up. We'll sew all the way down, okay? And then we're going to do this inside seam right here, this inseam. We'll sew up and around, okay? We're back at the sewing machine, and we're going to do our side seam each side, and then we're going to do that inseam crotch curve. So I'm just lining up my sleeve. This is my sleeve. Right sides together. side seam sewn, we're going to work on the cuffs. So here are my cuffs. They are still in the same way we had them when we sewed them, and I'm just going to trim these threads off. I'll turn them right side out, and then I'm going to press them. Lining up these raw edges here, okay? When I take them over to press, I'm going to have the seam on one side and then press it like this, because I actually need to know the exact opposite side of where that seam is. So if I press it like this, then I have a memory fold, and that'll be helpful when I have to sew back on. So if you did the double fold, hold 3 pieces of fabric on one side and 1 piece of fabric on the other, and just kind of fold it out like that. Okay, easy peasy. Gonna fold it in half like that and press. Those are my ankle cuffs. Okay, fold this out, hold 3 pieces in one hand, one side in the other. Just roll that one out. Perfect. Seam on one side, and we'll press it like that. Then we'll repeat. So 3 pieces of fabric in this hand, 1 little piece in this hand, and just fold this over. Just like that. Easy peasy. Makes for a less bulky seam, and when you're sewing seam to seams, which we'll be doing there, it's helpful. Okay, I'm going to take this over to my ironing board and just give it a quick press. Okay, so I'm back from pressing. If you need an extra visual, go ahead and mark the opposite side of the seam. So here's my seam. You can see my thread sticking out there, and I'm just going to pop a needle in right here. Needle is a little bit more precise than your pin, because your pin, or I mean your clip, is only going to get so where, but this pin is going to get in a precise spot. I do like to use the clips after I get them positioned. So opposite side, seam. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the seam of this ankle cuff with this inside curve seam. I'm just inserting my hand into it, and then I'm going to insert it into the romper, and I'm going to stagger my seams. So my seam for here is going this way, so this seam is going to go this way. It's going to make for a less bulky seam. It's going to be easier to sew and clip in place. Clips are a little bit more secure, and they are harder to run over with your serger because they're so big. Okay, and voila. And we're just going to repeat that with the other ankle cuff. Okay, so to do the cuffs for the sleeves, it's a little bit different because there is no seam on this side. So if you need a little guidance, just flatten it out and pop a pin in it. Now you know where it is. So the seam of my cuff will match up with the side seam. So I'm inserting my hand into it. And then I'm going to insert it in here. I'm going to stagger those seams. I'm going to clip it in place. I'm going to line up these two, and I'm going to clip it into place, lining these raw edges all the way up nice and tidy, just like that. I'm going to repeat on my other cuff. Okay, so with these positioned in place, I'm going to take them over to the machine and I'm going to sew them all one at a time. Are back at the sewing machine and we're going to start sewing our cuffs on. I'm going to start at the ankle cuff right here. So I'm going to bring my foot up and I'm going to sew in the round, which means I'm going to put my pressure foot into the cuff like this. Once I get a few stitches in, then I'm going to bring my fabric around and try to make sure all my raw edges are lined up pretty good. And I'm just going to gently stretch the cuff as needed from seam to seam. So my needles are up. I'll raise my foot and I'm just going to clear. Now that our cuffs are sewn on, we're going to turn our romper right side out. Want to fold our romper in half at the neckline and find center front and center back. And I'm going to mark these with a pin because, like I said, a little bit more precise for me. So front and back are marked, okay? And here is our hood. So the hood, this is the neck opening. This will be our center back, and this we will overlap center front by a 1/2 inch. And this is where the face will stick out. So I'm just going to flip this upside down. This is the neck opening. This is the top of the hood. But I need it to be right side up. So it's right side up. I'm going to open this up and now it's going to be right sides together. Grab some clips. And I'm first going to match up this back center line with this back seam. With that done, I'm going to overlap this hood piece by a 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to overlap this other piece by a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to base these overlapped pieces in place because if I do that, they're not going to pop out or get weird when I take this to the serger. And for me, that's very helpful. So, to the sewing machine, if you are very skilled and these don't pop out for you, head over to the serger and sew your hood on. So here I'm back at my sewing machine because I need to sew on my hood, but I need to base those crossover pieces first. Otherwise, with my luck, they'll pop out. So a basting stitch. What's a basting stitch? Basting stitch is basically just a really super long straight stitch. So if you can't remember which of your buttons does that, you'll just, watch the needle move if you press the wrong one. So you see it move? See it move? There we go. So this is the wrong one. So this one, I'm going to set it so it's really long. And that's a 6 for me. I'm not messing with the tension. Back at the serger, and when I sew my hoods on, I like to start at center back. Usually when I serge anything on, I like to start in the back just in case I screw it up. So I roll my needles up. And then that's about the halfway mark. So at this point, I'm going to gently stretch my hood as needed. I'm going to line up all these raw edges, and I'm going to make sure once again that the shoulder seam is going towards. So we're all done sewing all our pieces on. We've got the hood, we got sleeves, we got pockets, and that's everything we need. You can give it a press if you want, but I don't, so I'm not going to. This romper has other options like the snap placket and also a sleeveless option. So if you're into any of those other options, join me for the rest of the tutorials. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.